Classification of elements and periodicity in their properties. This chapter basically deals with the periodic properties which we have and how we classify the elements in the periodic into different types of periodic tables, and slowly and slowly how we reach to the modern and long form of periodic table. This chapter deals with all this. After studying the atomic structure and knowing that how the atoms of the one of the element different from the atoms of the other element, the next and the most important thing about is to study is that how their properties differ from one another. That means how the properties of one of the atom are different from the other. And it mainly depends on the arrangement of the electrons which are present around the nucleus in the atom. Now, how this different arrangement of the electrons around the nucleus now gives rise to the different types of properties that these different elements or atoms of the different elements are having. This is very interesting to note. That's why this chapter is very basic to understand that how the arrangement of the electrons in the different patterns or in the different ways in the orbitals around the nucleus leads to the different properties which are present in the atoms of the different elements. But first, the first thing which to learn is that the classification of elements. Man always has been trying to classify the things so that their study becomes easier. Earlier, the classification of elements was very easy because the number of elements known were very few. Now we are knowing more than almost 120 elements. To study all of these elements and the properties of all of these elements separately is a very difficult task, and to remember them is a very difficult task. So what the best way is to classify them into certain groups so that if we know the properties of any few of them, we can know the properties of the other. The second advantage of studying or classifying the elements is that if some unknown elements are there, we can probably tell these all can be the probable properties of those elements, and therefore we can actually discover them around us from our surroundings, because it is basically those properties which help us to identify the particular elements. Now, the scientist has been trying to classify the elements. The first credit to the classification of the element goes to the Dobereiner. Dobereiner in 1829 gave the first law of triads. He basically studied the major elements which are present around that time, which were actually discovered by that time, and when he arranged those elements according to their properties, he got a group of the three elements which can be placed together with the similar physical and chemical properties. That's why it's called law of triads. So these were the few elements he classified in the groups of three each. And what he came to know that when these are arranged in the increasing order of their atomic masses, the mass of the central element is found to be almost the arithmetic mean of the first and the third one. That means the mass of the sodium is the mean of the first and the third one, which is the lithium and the potassium. 7 plus 39 is 46, and the half of this is 23. So this is how he found that in all these three groups, the masses of the central element are the arithmetic mean of the first and the third one, and their properties also were found to be, properties of the middle elements were found to be intermediate to the first and the last one. Of course, they were found to be having similar physical and chemical properties. This was the first attempt by any person, any scientist, to classify the elements. But it was rejected later on because it was as such not based on any basic fundamental property. Moreover, it was not able to classify all the elements. So that is why it was rejected, and we moved to the next law, next type of classification, which is called Newton's law of octets.